Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where frontline sales leaders teach you how to build and scale an outbound sales team. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart. Today, I'm joined by an award-winning BDR and a senior BDR over at Cognetik. I really hope I got that right because I was struggling a little bit before. James Bawden, welcome to the show.
Collin, really honored to be on the show, and you got the name of the company right, and you got my last name right, so we're off to a great start.
2 for 2. It's all downhill from here. You may as well tune out now. Like, this is my pitch in my perfect game. Just like, let's shut it down.
We've already peaked.
Yeah.
Take care.
I did forget one thing. We'll talk about it, at the bottom of the episode, but you're also a podcast host. So you got a podcast. We're going to talk about that. And just wanted to tease that. We're not going to tell anybody what it's about. Just one of those annoying, open loops that we're going to create here. Because today we want to talk about how to build closer relationships with your SDRs. And I thought this would be a particularly interesting episode because we've had a ton of sales managers and sales development managers and directors of sales development, VPs on talking about coaching, training, and onboarding, but we've never really had it from the perspective of a BDR. And so I thought James would be a great person to come on here and sort of share from the flip side, not as a criticism of sales and development managers, but as a more of a, here's some things that I would love, to be a great sales dev manager, VP, director, whatever it is. Here's some things that would really help get me going and build a strong relationship. So I'm excited, but I'm going to ask the obvious question, James. Why should I care about building a closer relationship with my SDRs?
Well, I think it comes down to how well do you want your SDR team to perform and how long? Because without really supporting the folks on your team as human beings and supporting them in a holistic way, not just on one side of it, not just on the professional side of it, you're running a short game essentially, because the thing that contributes to long-lasting, successful sales teams are people who are successful not only in their business dealings, but in the relationships that they have with each other and the type of communication that goes on. And there's a bunch of books out there that have been written about why managers should care. And I think it's one of those things that when you say it out loud seems very obvious, but unfortunately something that doesn't always happen.
That's fair. And it's one of those roles that it tends to be a feeder role into the rest of the organization. And so the deeper you can kind of get that, you can build that level of understanding in that relationship, the better you can help, if you're an SDR manager, sort of pass on that talent to the rest of the company, which is sort of the real success rate of any type of managers. Are you, especially one that's dealing with generally the first, most junior hires in the company, are you creating great content, right? Are you able to find great people? And once you find great people, can you help turn them into superstars throughout the rest of the organization? And, of any of the companies where I've been in a leadership role, that's the thing that sort of gets me the most excited, is when I can see people that I hired and coached and trained and mentor, move up and move, and even move on. If they're taking, super senior roles elsewhere, I'm super happy for them. Because there's, let's be realistic. Like, I'm one of the founders here, and I recognize that the company can only grow so fast. And, when you have some people that are growing at a faster rate than the company is, then sometimes the right move for them is to move on. But hopefully we can, do a great job and build a path for them internally. And so I'm looking at, when you're looking at your team, what are some signs that your SDRs are sort of happy and engaged?
Some of those signs can be the obvious ones. Your teammates and team members are coming in the morning on time, maybe even a little bit early. They're showing up with a smile on their face. They're engaging. I think what's maybe easier to see or notice is a sales team that's not happy and engaged, because I've been there. I've been on both sides, and the teams that are happy and engaged, there's just a synergy. There's just an energy that's happening where You know that the person sitting next to you is there to help you, not necessarily against you. You know that your leadership team is behind you and you guys are doing something and you have a purpose and you're all on one team, and that just shines through. And then obviously, when it comes to performance, that element just boosts performance always. And the teams that are not happy and engaged, nobody's talking to each other. You can almost see it on people's faces when they're unhappy.
How they interact with people. It's almost like the difference of like a car that's properly oiled, that you get like a nice synthetic oil in there, versus a car that has like mud or sand in there.
Yeah.
Right.
That,
everything's jerking and starting, and
yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, completely.
So we don't want to focus on the negative side too much, because there's enough that's been said about that. But let's talk about some ways that managers can develop that relationship. So from your perspective, what are some things that you like to see that have really helped you kind of bond and build a deeper relationship with the people you work with?
Yeah. So over the course of my career, not just at my time as an SDR. I've only been an SDR for the last 2 years. I was a full cycle sales rep for the rest of it. And the teams that I've been a part of that were successful and happy and engaged, really the first element was the leader that was genuinely interested in seeing their direct reports, the frontline salespeople, as humans and not bodies in a chair or number of people on a sales floor. And so that really kind of has to be that first decision that leader makes. And it has to be genuine, and it requires emotional intelligence to even kind of get there. But that's got to be the foundational layer, because I've worked for leaders that wanted to act like they cared, and that lasted 90 days, maybe 6 months if they're really good at it. And then things get stressful and the cracks start to show, and then they could get, they actually don't care because it's not genuine and it's not real. So I think that's kind of the first layer to starting to build that closer relationship.
And so what does that look like to you in your eyes?
Yeah. So for me, I think if you're not naturally doing that, if that's just not naturally who you are as a person, because I've had leaders that are just naturally very in tune with people and very concerned about their emotional well-being and supporting them emotionally. But I've also had leaders who have told me that it took them time to develop this skill of really being engaged in their team members' lives. And it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, none of this is easy because it requires real dedication and being genuine, like I said. And so I think to start down this path, I think what a leader needs to do, especially with their SDR team, is identify a top 3 for each of their SDR in a personal and professional bucket. So to me, a top 3 would be the top 3 most important things to them, individually and specifically to them, in the personal bucket and the professional bucket. So if you're building a team, this can be a part of the onboarding process and just kind of that initial couple of days, right? So who are you? Who do we have here? What are the top 3 most important things to you outside of work? Family, hobbies, kids. What are the most important things for you professionally? Money, making an impact here at the company, career growth, whatever it is. So I think that's a very easy way to kind of start thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. I remember I had a mentor, Joel. I still do, but he moved to the UK, which makes it very challenging to connect on a regular basis. But he had this quadrant, and he would draw, and it was money, status, interesting work, people. And he's like, stack rank them. Like, what's number 1, 2, 3, 4? And And it wasn't the exercise of like actually looking at, oh, what is your, it's not a Myers-Briggs where you're like, oh, I'm ENTR. I don't think that's even a correct piece. But it was the, like, how important are each of these to you? And then he had a way of like mentally curving it out based on, like, not saying like, oh, 1 out of 10 or anything like that, but he'd just be able to say, okay, well, some people are, it's mostly family and money, and then interesting work and status, or, not a big deal. Right. And then others would be, oh, it's super interesting work and it's, good people. And then, the money and everything else doesn't really matter. And so I really loved that as a framework, because it sort of got me thinking, okay, well, like, how do I not diagnose, but, I grew up in sales. Like, I was raised by sales. So I'm used to like frameworks, right? So like, what's my band? What's my medic? What's my anim, or like, how am I qualifying? What are my qualification criteria? So I'm just like, that's what I grew up on. And so I want to have like a bit of a framework. And so that's what really drew me to his quadrants. Cause you can sort of, it kind of boxes you in a little bit, pun intended. But
yeah, but it's that process of even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. And just remembering to have that conversation, and then sort of the value is not the box itself. The value is the conversation that it creates.
Exactly.
And so I love how you're starting with the sort of, personal top 3. So like, what are your friends? Like, what are your hobbies? What do you do outside? What makes you tick? Like, why do you do this? Right. It sort of helps understand their why. And then the professional is more like short, medium, long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, one thing that you can do with each of those buckets is, on the personal side, whether it's that quadrant or a pie chart or a top 3, however you want to organize it, using those top 3 things to engage and build rapport with your reps and develop a genuine interest in those top 3 things, or wherever they kind of lie on the quadrant. If they're super into hockey and are huge Pittsburgh Penguins fans, how easy it is for you to, add the Pittsburgh Penguins onto your little scoreboard on your ESPN app and just kind of keep up with it and say, hey, so the Penguins won last night. I mean, just little things like that. They make a difference, and it may sound corny or whatever, but it helps you kind of just let them know that you're thinking about things other than how many emails they sent or how many cold calls they've made.
I just got to be Canadian for a second. People that are Penguins fans, I'm pretty sure they call them the Pens, to sort of abbreviate.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm not like a diehard Pens fan, but I do follow, obviously, Sid the Kid, being the
Oh yeah,
hockey player he is. They get a couple others on the team, but this isn't a hockey podcast. But I can totally relate. Unfortunately, we got like 2 guys on our team that are big Flames fans. And so, they happen to be doing well. Our Canucks are a bit of a joke. So it's more the opposite. They're giving me a tough time, but I think having that extra connection, and we actually did a fantasy hockey league as a Rev team. And
yes,
I'm pretty sure we gambled something on it, but I'm sure I'm going to lose because, these guys definitely know more than I do. But I think it's those little things, like, you're finding out where you're aligned. And I was fortunate that, these 2 guys played hockey, and I think they were the first 2 people in the company, and we're like 37 now. And I think we were probably about 25 at the time when we hired the first one. I was like, these are the first 2 guys that play hockey or grew up playing hockey. So I wasn't just trying to hire only people that played hockey, and them just cherry picking this example because, it sort of aligns. But
yeah.
If I wasn't into hockey, and like we had, like our VP of marketing, VP of sales, they both jumped in and they joined that pool so that they could participate in the ribbing of, people when their team is playing like garbage.
It's important. It's important to, and more and more companies are doing things like this organizationally, right? So fantasy leagues and this kind of softball leagues outside of work and things like that. But it's important for you to have those types of things for your team, and that are specific to you and your individual teammates, because it's fun. I mean, it starts to build a picture of somebody as a whole, right?
So can you give me a couple examples of from your life of like what has been some good like extracurricular activities that you've done with your team that really help sort of build that bond, bridge the gap between like employee manager, and just bring it a little bit closer?
Yeah, sometimes it hasn't even always been outside of work. So one of the first things I worked in retail wireless sales for the first 5 years of my sales career. So that's a tough gig in general, and
Yeah.
morale is very important because it's customer facing. And so I had a really, really great manager named Rena Wall. If she's ever listening to this, she deserves all of the spotlight in the world because she was just so great at emotionally supporting us. And um, I remember, we never did anything outside of work, like casually, but one day she just kind of brought in a grill and put it out back and just made hot dogs and hamburgers for us. And it was like a Saturday and we were really busy and we had a lot, we were kind of under the gun and stressed out about hitting numbers and needed to hit a certain number. And she just totally flipped that day from being something that could have been really stressful and a time that could have kind of pitted us against each other, and made it into something that was like a team building experience that was from her heart. And it was a great time. I remember, I mean, I had a really great day that day sales wise, and I went home in a great mood. I was super tired and even more eager to get up and come perform for that leader the next day. And so, yeah, things like that. It doesn't always have to be outside of work, and that definitely stands out in my mind.
That's awesome. So your love language is like food for sure.
Ah,
Hey.
completely, completely. If there is catered food or food that's provided, you've won a large portion of my heart.
That's awesome. Especially in retail where like, you're sort of at the mercy of the swarm.
Yeah.
And to have the foresight to be like, hey, this is gonna be a busy day. These people are gonna be slammed. I'm gonna come in and make them some lunch. That's a really thoughtful, low cost, well timed. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's thoughtful. It shows that she is thinking a layer deeper.
yeah. So we kind of talked about the beginning of when you start, right? It's the talking about the personal top three, the professional top three. That's great to, it's sort of a conversation you can have a couple of times. But then what? Right? Like now we're into one-on-ones territory, and
Yeah.
um, you can't just keep bringing up the same questions all the time. Hey, what's your personal top three? It's like, I know you're a Pens fan. I know you like food, like what more can we talk about?
Yeah, yeah. And so on the professional side, of the top three, and because I think the personal thing is always evolving, right? So it doesn't have the worst thing you could do is think to yourself, okay, these are my set of questions that I'm going to ask to make sure that I cover the personal top three today. Like that's not the way to do it. That kind of list is only to kind of get you to start just knowing, and then hopefully you're engaging in conversation and you're getting to know that person more. So the personal side of your interactions can be constantly malleable and constantly changing because everybody's changing and going through new things. And so I think on the professional side, what you need to do is you need to have those top three things that are important to them. And then, really sit down and set some 30, 60, 90-day milestones based on those things that are most important to them. And again, have it be something that's malleable and able to change, and kind of a constant conversation of okay, so how are we tracking 30, 60, 90 days? Does 36 do these milestones still make sense? Because you mentioned one-on-ones. So one-on-ones are a manager's time to talk to each member of their team and essentially do a performance review or see how things are going. And I think the most common set of questions that get asked in a one-on-one, what's working, what's not working. Well, that repetitive line of questioning will eventually, if you're not careful, and I've had this happen to me as a leader and also as somebody sitting in the rep seat, where it's like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, what's working, the same thing that's been working, what's not working. I don't really feel like telling you, because if I tell you, like, you're not actually going to be able to fix it. It's somebody else's problem. It's sales ops problem. So I'm just going to tell them, it can quickly become pretty valueless. So I
Yeah.
think
Because it's so easy if you don't have that level of trust built up. The it's like a prospect. Like, the more trust and rapport you build with them, the deeper the level of information you're going to be able to get. And it's like that, but almost to the extreme with your sales, with your team that you're engaging with on a regular basis. Is if there isn't enough sort of gas in that emotional tank of like, hey, we've got a strong relationship, the relationship tank, let's call it.
yeah.
Right? Then you don't have, there isn't going to be enough to get them to share exactly what what you're looking for, right? So you're not going to get that negative feedback. You're not going to get I had a bad day and it's because of this tough call. I'm just going to say, how's it going? Fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it requires just kind of going deeper on not only the professional side, but on the professional, or on the personal side, but on the professional performance review side, like, go deeper than what's working and what's not working. Like, okay, so let's look at these 30 and 60, 90-day milestones,
Mm-hmm.
right? And let's incorporate how they feel about what's going on, right? How are you emotionally feeling at this point? Are you stressed every day coming to work? Are you, feeling good and charged up and energetic about your progress? Because if you're not, we can look at what you've done and I can point out some things to you that are going to make you feel a little bit better, right? Or because we've got this level of communication and these milestones in place, they're going to help us make sure that we don't ever lose sight, right? Because I think a lot of the times what happens, and this has happened to me, you start and you have these conversations about, oh yeah, so I really want to do this here at this company. I'm in this role here, but I would love to do X, Y, and Z. That could be another role. That could be just added responsibility down the road. And then a lot of the times it just doesn't happen because there's not regular check-ins and it's not actually being thought about what are the milestones that need to happen in the next quarter, in the next 2 months, in the next month, to make this a reality for this person. And then what ends up happening, they leave, right? Because they came there and they thought one thing was going to happen and they performed well. And then you aren't following up on your end of the deal because you've got a ton of other things going on and tons of reps to worry about. So I think that kind of replacement of what's working and what's not working with checking in on those milestones can make a big difference in the way that you conduct your one-on-ones, and just takes it a deeper.
Perfect. So first 5 minutes, you're sort of checking in on the top three, personal, sort of asking some genuine questions. And then instead of the like, what's working, what's not working, you're sort of replacing that with sort of more tracking on their like 30, 60, 90-day kind of growth milestones.
Yeah. And how they're feeling about it.
Yeah.
Right. And how it's affecting, what might be affecting their progress holistically, not just at work, because a lot of the times sales is so emotional. It's such an emotional and mental game. And people are people and they have, lots of crazy things that happen in their lives. And so if you're not aware of that, you may be thinking and seeing a rep the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So it could save you a lot of time and pain.
So if I'm thinking about the shape of these one-on-ones, it's the first 5 minutes, you're checking in on the sort of top three, starting with the personal stuff. Then you jump into the professional 30, 60, 90. Then what?
Yep. Then, the rest of that meeting really needs to be a back and forth conversation about whatever is on their minds. So areas that they think they need to improve, because everybody's different. Some people, and you're going to know, by just kind of that constant work of getting to know them personally and professionally, you're going to know that this person has trouble asking for help, right? So I need to maybe, in this bulk time where we kind of just free flow and have a conversation, maybe make sure that I'm, doing all I can to pull that out of them because, you know, they have a hard time asking for help or just, you know, the best one-on-ones that I've had have been a time where after I feel like not only does my leader know what I've been up to, they know what I need help with, but I feel lighter afterwards. I feel like, oh, okay, cool. For the next week, I'm good. You know, I feel juiced up. I feel energized kind of on all levels. And that happens just through genuine, natural conversation. And so, you know, the worst one-on-ones are the ones that are structured all the way through, right? So pipeline review, what's working, what's not working. It becomes very robotic and you're not, and then, you know, the glossing over starts to happen to get it to go over quicker, to get the meeting over quicker, you know? And so I think this makes it something that is kind of constantly relevant and you want to go into it with the idea of lightening the load on your reps' shoulders after the one-on-one. They should feel refreshed and have been able to vent if they want to, you know, whatever needs to happen for them to walk out and feel better than they did when they walked in.
And sometimes you just need to take them out for a beer or a coffee or
get
outside the office.
Yeah. Use, you know, all of this. These are recommendations and a very light framework. All of this, the magic really happens when you're intuitive and you're using emotional intelligence to kind of, you know, gracefully navigate through these relationships because it's not easy and everybody's so different and everybody's got their own story and past and all that great stuff that makes humans humans. So, but if you can harness that and really, you know, get to know your teammates as people, it's gonna benefit everybody in the long run.
Yeah, that's great. It's I used to do these really, really structured one-on-ones.
Me too.
Ben Horowitz's format. I think it came out of The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it was like, if we can improve in any way, how do we do it? You know, what's the number one problem? What's not fun about working here? Who's kicking ass? You know, if you're me, what changes you make? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like, those are great. And I kept, you know, I think the idea, the value there was like, you want to get this feedback from the company or from the people you work with on a regular basis. I was doing it every week. And like, they're like, it's the same questions, same answers. It's the same. And that was the feedback I kept hearing. I'm like, okay, well, got to do things differently. So we sort of flipped it on its head now. And I say, it's basically, this is your meeting, right? You keep an agenda of like, here's what you want to talk about. And my goal is to just help you unlock whatever you need, whether it's like, I got to go move a boulder for you, or you just want to vent about, you know, your wedding. You know, I'm here to sort of support and help figure out how I can, like, you know, unlock things. Because like, as managers, we're supposed to be multipliers, right? We're supposed to be the people that you put in charge of this other group of humans, and in hopes of, instead of like, you know, just a regular 1x you're getting out of them, you're going to get 1.2, 1.3, 1.5
exactly.
out of 7 people. And if you can get that, you know, you can, you know, double, triple, you know, the sort of output with some very minimal tweaks. And so, you know,
I love it.
Yeah. One of the reasons why it's so important to, you know, keep coming back to these kinds of things. And, you know, I certainly, when I was doing the really structured one-on-ones, I was getting good feedback in the first couple of times. And I'm not going against having structured calls like that, but I think having them on the agenda and having a couple loose things that I want to check in on. And I don't follow exactly what you're doing, but I think I'm going to take some things out of our conversation today and apply it to sort of how I run my one-on-ones. Because it's one thing that is so easy to forget about, is that sort of that personal check-in.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I mean, I think it's great that you essentially just let them run the meeting, right? That's very empowering. And there is no perfect formula. And it also depends on how often you're having your one-on-ones. Are they weekly? Then you definitely don't need to do what I just said of like 30, 60, 90 days. No, like that's not going to make any sense. You know, you need to, but the idea of, you know, personal, professional, meaningful, genuine. These are the things that are going to make these interactions with your teammates valuable and what are going to contribute to the overall success of your sales team, because it's got to be a part of the equation, the emotional support and the emotional connection. It's just got to be.
Totally. It's like that. And I'm using it out of context here, but I think Sheryl Sandberg wrote Lean In, right? And
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. And she talks about it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration.
Mm.
Right. So, and that seems to be what we're getting to. Like when things get more remote, you've got your email on your phone all the time. It's sort of like this always on environment. Slack's always here. Email's always there. Salesforce is always there. The lines of like, when do I start work and when do I finish work are getting blurred, right? Like I ask myself this on a daily basis. And so it's about this like work-life integration. And if you feel like, when I go to work, I'm personally being taken care of, and I don't have to, I'm not sitting there worrying about doing this, and that in my personal life, it sort of unlocks and frees you up to focus on what I'm here for.
Yes.
I think the book that shaped my thinking the most on this, I'm totally drawing a blank, but it was called I've got a PDF of it somewhere in my email that I always look up, and it was called The Unschedule. And it's basically, it wasn't the book, The Unschedule, but essentially the idea was you look at there's the book, The Now Habit was the book. And essentially the core idea, you don't have to buy the book. I'm just kidding. The book was super valuable. Yeah. And I read it early on in my professional career when I was trying to figure out how to get work done as somebody who's pushing paper as opposed to like moving around drywall. And basically the idea is you look at your schedule for the week on like Friday or like for the next week or Sunday for the upcoming week. And you say, okay, what are the things I need to get done in my personal life? That in order for me to have a happy and balanced week, these are the things I need to take care of. And for me, I've got to book a couple weeks out because my calendar is just disgusting. But I find when I don't do that, I'm just like, I'm chaotic. And not only is my, cause we're in sales, right? I'm working with our revenue team. So I still see myself as being in sales as well as having other responsibilities. So my calendar, everybody knows that my company is just garbage. Like it's just packed all the time. And I go from these moments of being like totally frazzled about it to like, totally chill about it. And when I look back, the times when I'm totally frazzled is when the things where my personal life is like not unraveling, but like, as an example, one thing that used to drive me crazy is like, I've got thick hair and I'm not going to complain about that, but it doesn't do anything. It just does this. And then it just gets thicker. And then all of a sudden I've got like mullet. And that would just drive me crazy. And I struggled so much with like trying to find somebody who could cut my hair where I didn't look like an idiot. And it took me a long time. And the only person I could find was she only cuts hair during the day. I'm like, okay. And so that's one thing. I book my appointment, every couple of months or every, number of weeks, whatever it is. As I'm there, I book it. It happens in the middle of the day. I walk down the street. I get my haircut. I walk back. I feel great. And it's one of those things that's, if I miss it and I don't do it, I'm thinking about it. And it's like this like background process that's running, like in your task manager that's eating up mental memory.
Yep.
Right? And sometimes you just need to be like, all right, control, delete this shit. And like, I need to clear stuff out and I need to get some stuff figured out. Because if there's too much of that building up, you're never going to get a chance to like really focus and get into that sort of deep work.
Yeah. Well, and that's why the emotional support side of things for leaders is often overlooked, because it's not like, if it's not there, it's not going to immediately make a difference in performance. Right. So if you're, focusing on execution and only professional, like you're going to get results, but it's the fact that you're ignoring that personal thing in the background that's kind of like eating away slowly at the morale and slowly at the, productivity of your team. And it's the same for an individual, right? When you feel like your things in your personal life are slipping, I know people that can use work and the structure of work to kind of help them pull that personal side back up. And then I know people who just like things start to crumble and it feels like, the work starts to suffer. And I think everybody goes through both scenarios. And I think everybody has experienced this. And so to be able to share that experience with your team, I think is an incredibly valuable thing that you can do to start having that because it's already, the personal life, like you said, and the professional life are already blended so much that how can you not think about that and see that as a variable in how you need to interact with your team.
And one thing that I liked about our previous conversation that we talked about, and I want to get to the cold call after this, but
yeah,
the one thing I liked is how you talked about sort of not just blending it, between the boss manager, or the manager and the team member, but also getting other people on your team involved. So
yes.
A little bit about your ideas there.
Yeah, well, this is actually something that I just have experienced at Cognetik, right? So one of the things we did when because we're a brand new sales team, never had a sales team before. So all of us are new, sales director, BDR, AE, we're all new. And we kind of come together and we have this meeting and we talk about like, okay, so this is my role now. What do I want to do while I'm here? What career path do I want? Because the fun part of being a part of a startup is you have kind of that opportunity to start thinking about those things and kind of creating paths. But in general, I've found that knowing that my colleague wants to eventually go into inside sales means that I can proactively help him do that. Mm-hmm. Because if that's not the career path I want, it helps with the inevitable competition thing sometimes, right? So if like a good portion of my team wants to do something completely different than me, then that natural inclination for salespeople sometimes to, I don't know, not want to help as much because you don't want somebody to do better than you to take your seat, right? Let's be honest. It happens. It allows you to just genuinely help the other person. And that's what I've found here at Cognetik. It's been great because I know what my colleagues want to do. And so even if it's just something small, like I see an article about, let's say so-and-so wants to be in customer success. And I see a really cool article on customer success, I can flip that over to them because I know it's something they're passionate about. It's not what they're doing right now, but it's something that they're working towards. And that transparency, if you're a leader and you involve everybody on the team with, hey, like this is everybody's professional top 3, or this is where everybody wants to go and do, then everybody's got a purpose and everybody knows why everybody else is here. I mean, it just kind of changes the dynamic because I think a lot of the time you're in your role, you're a rep, especially with BDRs. It's the first entry into a company. Lots of times, hopefully, there's many paths that you can go as a BDR. So I think, it definitely can just help everybody remain collaborative and supportive of each other.
And as an upside, now you know who your competition is. So it's like, trying to survive the zombie apocalypse. You don't have to be the fastest runner. You just have to be faster than this guy.
Yeah. Well, and that helps too, right?
Yeah.
I know so-and-so is on the same path as I am. I'm going to check what he's doing and make sure I'm up to par with what he's doing. And if he's doing anything better than I am, I'm going to have to go figure out what he's doing and figure out how to do it better.
You want to hear something crazy?
Of course.
I forgot to hit record.
No way. I see it up in the top left.
Oh, man.
I see it in the top left, man.
Yeah, that bombed. I was like, yeah.
Well, I've had nightmares about doing that. So that's actually like, I'm very weirdly OCD about making sure that was at the top.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All right, let's do that cold call we were talking about here. So, not so great because I was forgetting on your side you get the little red dot. It's like rookie move here. Rookie move.
I love it.
So we're gonna cold call. Do the most end the episode in the most sales podcast way possible. Do a little cold call role play. So talk to me about who am I and what's my role here?
Yeah. So, Collin, you can be someone that I want to have come on my podcast, the Lunch Break Podcast, and I'm going to cold call you, and you will not have any idea about who I am or what the podcast is about, as probably most people out there don't right now anyway. So this will be a great opportunity for me to try and get you to come on the show.
All right. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Ring, ring. Hey, this is Collin.
Collin, I am so glad I connected with you. James with the Lunch Break Podcast here. No, I'm calling completely out of the blue, but do you have a few seconds so I can tell you the reason for my call?
I'm just about to walk into a meeting. I've got 10 people waiting for me, so you got 30 seconds.
No worries, Collin. So my name is James. I'm calling because, first of all, Collin, I thoroughly enjoyed the Predictable Revenue podcast, been a long-time listener, and you guys have inspired me to start my own podcast where I interview sales pros. We talk about their stories and what they've learned along the way. Wanted to see if you would do me the honor of coming on the podcast, joining me as a guest, and talking about the awesome things that you've been doing in your sales career.
I don't think I'm a good fit. It doesn't sound interesting.
So, Collin, I know from watching you on your podcast that you are passionate about the sales community and actionable tips and things that people can really use. And so I would love to take 10 minutes of your time when you're actually expecting my call to just talk about, the things that you can bring to the table, the things that I would be very grateful for you to bring to the audience here, Collin.
Cool. You get the meeting.
I love it.
I'm not sure how to throw objections here. Hit us up in a YouTube comment. If give me some pointers on how to calibrate the level of meanness and some good objections you've heard. I'd love to up my game here. I've been on the sales side for too long.
Yeah, well, Collin, this is a unique experience. This is the first time. First of all, you didn't warn me that this was happening before. On our pre-call, so this was completely spur of the moment, and what a great way to end the podcast, man. I'm not sure how good I did on that, but
I like it. And I started doing, I gave you a heads up at the beginning of the recording.
Yep.
I used to do it cold, so you had nothing to
oh, wow. Okay.
And I was like, I
was lucky.
Yeah. So at least you got some heads up,
Yeah. Okay. Well, no complaints then.
Cool, man. Well, James, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been great, man.
Awesome. Collin, really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Looking forward to checking out the Lunch Break podcast. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place?
LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. James Bawden on LinkedIn. Anchor.fm/James-Bawden. Lunch Break Podcast.
Perfect. I'm going to throw a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes here. So check it out there. And thanks for listening.